Como sigo creyendo en ti más.
Thank you so much to Congregation Har HaShem and all of our Undocu America and general operating funders for their generous support of this program. And thank you all for joining us here tonight. Although we're all gathering from the comfort of our homes, we do want to honor that Motus Theater is coming to you live from Colorado, which stands on the land of the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and the Ute. I also want to acknowledge that we're all probably processing just a lot of pain and trauma and anxiety emotions due to COVID-19 and racism, ongoing challenges to democracy and health and economic fears. There's a lot. So let's take 3 collective deep breaths while we reflect in our mind on something we're each grateful for. So ready? Inhale with me. Exhale. And a second one. And the last one. Thank you. My name is Tanya Chaitis. I am an undocumented immigrant. I am a monologist in Motus's Undocu America series, and I'm the National Outreach and Education Director for Motus Theater, where we create original theater to facilitate dialogue on critical issues of our time. We use the power of art to build alliances across diverse segments of our community. And tonight, we're really excited to share with you some stories from Motus Theater's Undocu America tour. This evening, we'll be sharing an Undocu America monologue that will help us more deeply understand the impact of immigration policy and the lives of undocumented people so that we can reflect and take action. They were created in a Motus Monologue workshop in collaboration with Motus's artistic director, Kirsten Wilson, who is behind the scenes today running tech. So one of Motus's strategies for this Undocu America tour to strengthen our community and our country is to present allied performances called Shoebox stories, where we ask people, often in positions of public leadership in our communities and country, to stand in the shoes of an undocumented Motus monologist and read their story aloud. The readers don't need to agree with everything they read in the story. They just need to be willing to suspend judgment, model courageous empathy, and see the world for a moment through someone else's eyes. For Motus's We Were Strangers series, we're asking faith leaders to read a Motus monologue. Tonight, you will all watch Caroline Saliman, beloved teacher at Congregation Har HaShem and the Boulder JCC, model civic hospitality and deep listening by stepping into the shoes of Motus monologist Armando Peniche and reading aloud his story. After the reading, she will reflect together with Armando on the impact of reading his story. And before we begin, I do want to welcome Rabbi Green. Would you offer an opening teaching to prepare our hearts and minds to hold the intention of our time together?
Absolutely, absolutely. The Torah says, "My father was a fugitive Aramaean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to Adonai, the God of our fathers. And Adonai heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery and our oppression. Adonai freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, and by signs and portents. God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil, which you, O God, have given me." The text is from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 26, but it's also read in our Passover Seder. Passover is just a couple of weeks away, and we're going to be responding to this text. But it's more than a text. It's more than our history. It's another piece of our memory within the Jewish community, our memory of being refugees ourselves. And not only is it the remembrance, but it is also a message of holding gratitude for getting to the promised land and bringing first fruits of the soil. Usually we would think if we had a first growth, we want to consume it right away, but no, we needed to lift it up and make it an offering. So our history is really memory. Our beginning as a people were as refugees. And getting to the land filled with promise means that we need to express our gratitude, which is so much more than offering thanks, because we don't come with empty hands ever. We in the Jewish community are a people of immigrants who have repeatedly entered and then pushed out of strange lands. We are a people carrying our own story and our own heritage across one border to another. We are a people trying to settle down and become productive members of still another society. And as a Jew, I cannot bear to watch people making the same accusations against our neighbors as they did against my grandparents. Our people's history as strangers, exiles, refugees, asylum seekers reminds us of the many struggles faced by immigrants today. We affirm our commitment to create the same opportunities for today's immigrants that were so valuable to our community in this country not so many years ago.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Green. And as we get started, for those of you listening, I would like to ask, what is one word you want to echo from Rabbi Green's teaching? And you can go ahead and just type it into the chat. Again, the question is, what is one word you want to echo from Rabbi Green's teaching? And already I see people starting to type in some answers. Memory, remember, seem to be popular. People of immigrants. I know something that stuck with me was the whole phrase, right? Like our history of refugees, stranger, connected, gratitude, acceptance, hospitality. And you can keep sharing those. I just wanted to thank Rabbi Green for getting us started. I see neighbors, promise, stranger. Thank you all. And at this point, I also want to welcome Teresita Lozano, who specializes both in sacred music and border music and comes from a Mexican crypto-Jewish background. She will actually start by singing Motus's theme song from Shoebox Stories that honors our time together today.
If you could just for a moment take a walk in my shoes, feel the weight of my burden, see the world as I do. Maybe then we'll find a way to live a life where each can say, I respect who you are. So take a moment to refrain from all the judgment and the pain, and hold my story for a while. Si puedes por un momento caminar mi camino, sentir el peso de mi carga y ver el mundo como yo. Así vamos a encontrar la manera de hablar y decir yo te respeto. Toma un momento sin rencor, sin todo el juicio y el dolor. Ten mi historia por un tiempo. If you could just for a moment let me walk in your shoes, feel the weight of your burden, live the life that you do. Neighbor, then I'll understand, despite our difference, shake your hand, and now respect who you are. I take this moment to refrain from any judgment and my pain, and hold your story for a while. If you could just for a moment take a walk in my shoes.
Thank you so much, Teresita. And now I welcome Motus Monologist Armando Peniche, who will introduce his reader.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Teresita. Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Peniche. I'm a monologist with Motus Theater. And another cool thing I do is I work for the Denver Public Library. I do a lot of family and teen programming. So a big part of my day goes to helping people get resources. I'm also an aspiring writer. I'm working on 2 children's picture books. And I just want to share how happy and honored I am to be here today with such a great community. And I'm super thankful to be part of this event. And now Caroline Saliman will be reading aloud my autobiographical monologue entitled This Beautiful Dark Brown Skin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I have the honor to read Armando Peniche's monologue entitled This Beautiful Dark Brown Skin. Like many Latinos, I have a huge family. Unfortunately, I never get to see most of them because they are on the other side of the US border with Mexico. My family in the US, I can count on my fingers. A few uncles, my dad, my brothers, my sister. Thankfully, I've always been fortunate to have wonderful friends who I see as my family. That's why in the 7th grade, when my dad decided to move us to a different neighborhood, I chose to remain in the same middle school to stay with my old friends. Hanging out with my friends during lunch and sitting next to my secret crush in math class seemed like a no-brainer, but it made for my trip to school to be a long one. I had my routine down though. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., catch the first bus at 6:15, arrive at the second bus stop at 6:45, and hope I didn't have to chase after the bus. If I made it to the corner of Kentucky and Federal by 7:15, I was good. I could take a deep breath. This meant I had time to stop at the convenience store and grab a cup of hot cocoa, maybe play a couple of arcade games before school. Talk about a warm-up. I'm winning against hordes of zombies before even starting my school day? Yep, no pop quiz was ever bigger than that. After school on nice days, I would skip the second bus and just walk. My dad would still be at work when I came home and my sister at her after-school activities, so I was in no hurry to get to an empty house. On my way home, I would use the concrete dividers on the sidewalk as measures and take the time to practice my music lessons for cello. Each step I made on the sidewalk was a note. I would walk and count 1, 2, 3, 4. For longer sections, I would count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. For shorter sections, 1, 2, 3, 4. I had my music teacher in my head telling me, "Come on, Armando, stay on the beat, stay on the beat." So one day, I'm happily counting along, looking down at my concrete measures, when I see blue and red lights flashing across the sidewalk, and I hear an angry voice yelling at me, "Stop, freeze." I was totally confused. I might fight video game zombies, but I was just a kid, barely old enough to sit in the front seat of a car. And here are 2 police officers coming at me, hands on their guns, yelling. I was freaking out, like, what did I do wrong? My mind was going through a mess of different emotions because as an undocumented person, the last thing you want to do, the very, very, very last thing is to get in trouble. Even a simple traffic violation can lead to deportation. So I'm thinking, what did I do? What could it have been? Did I forget to pay the bus driver? But no way, I remember paying David. He gave me a transfer and he would never call the cops, even if I forgot. The officers were yelling at me to turn around and put my hands up. I was struggling to understand what was going on when the second officer physically spun me around, stuck his hands into my pockets and started pulling everything out. My gum, coins left from the arcade, my bus transfer, my student ID. He yanked my arms tight behind my back and handcuffed me. I was in shock, totally confused and terrified. And then, with some kind of kid logic, I thought, is it my hair? My family didn't have money for regular haircuts, so I cut my own hair, which, as you can imagine, with a 12-year-old didn't work out so well. I would always end up using the number 4 clipper to get rid of the patches. At least it was even. No, I thought, it can't be my hair. Then they searched every pocket in my backpack, dumping out my school books. They were looking for something they couldn't find, and that's when it hit me. They stopped me because of the color of my skin. They think I'm some criminal. I can't believe they're doing this. What if they take me to jail and my dad has to come and get me? Will he need an ID? Could they deport my dad? The officers pushed me down, grabbed my student ID, and went back to their car, leaving me on the street handcuffed. It took about 20 minutes to run my ID through some database. And while I sat on that curb, all these cars were going by with people looking at me, pointing at me, like I stole something or robbed somebody. They assumed the officers were making the city safer for them, stopping a thief. I'm a kid in handcuffs sitting on the curb, and I wanted to get up and yell, "Stop! I'm the victim here. I didn't do anything. Let me go. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." And I can't explain to you, even now, how humiliated and ashamed I felt sitting there with everyone going by, pointing at me, looking at me, thinking I was some criminal. Finally, the officers came out of their car, threw my stuff into my backpack and uncuffed me. One handed me my ID and said the most ironic thing I've ever heard: "Stay out of trouble." No apology, nothing. When all along I wasn't the trouble, they were. I remember it taking me a long time to pull myself together, to even figure out which way was home. But I did make it home, and like many other days, there was no one there, no one I could talk to. Instinctively, I grabbed my soccer ball and went to an elementary school a few blocks away where I often played. There was no field, but there was a baseball cage where I would sometimes practice my shots. I stayed there until evening, kicking the soccer ball over and over and over against the metal cage, taking out my anger and shame on that ball until my foot couldn't take the pain anymore. I often wonder how many other brown and black kids go through this stuff. Pulled over, harassed by the police with no way to channel the fear, anger, and humiliation. How many undocumented kids go through this stuff and have no one at home to talk to? No shoulder to cry on, no soccer ball, because we start to serve a life sentence away from our families as soon as we cross that border. I'm a man now, watching another man, our former president, tell the citizens of this country that if you're an undocumented Mexican, you must be in a dangerous gang, a rapist, a murderer. Can I be safe walking home from my job at the library when more and more Americans view people who look like me as a threat? Even more importantly, is my 9-year-old son going to look like a bad guy to a couple of officers? Will my neighbors see me for who I am? A young father hurrying to pick up his son from school so that he doesn't have to walk into an empty house? Or am I their worst nightmare? Like some zombie that must be stopped? And this beautiful dark skin you see that people are being taught is a threat to this country is the rich brown tone I inherited from my grandfather. And let me tell you, My grandfather is the best person I've ever known. No matter how poor he was, he would always house and feed people. Before he turned to religion, he was so patriotic that even when the national anthem was played on the radio, he would stand up. And he loved his grandkids so much. He would wake up extra early and walk miles to a place in Mexico that gave out free milk at 5 a.m. So despite our poverty, we had what we needed to grow strong. Across that invisible border, my grandfather is the person I've missed the most. And because I'm undocumented, I never got a chance to go back and say goodbye to him. So when you see someone with this beautiful dark brown skin walking down the street, I hope you think of my strong, kind-hearted Mexican grandfather. And I hope you will think of me. And I hope you will think of my beautiful son and help me to keep him safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And now Teresita will sing her musical response to Armando's story, and all of you listening can go ahead and share a few thoughts in the Zoom chat about what most impacted you as you heard Caroline read aloud Armando's story. Here's Teresita singing a song in honor of his story in the Judeo-Spanish language of Ladino.
So this particular song is called a durme. Durme in Ladino means to sleep. And this is a lullaby that would be sung to a daughter or a son, a young child, by a parent who only wishes to protect, knowing that there is danger in the world. To be sung especially during a time where there's unease, where you don't really know what's going to happen, especially when it comes to any sort of social or actual physical violence against your family, and you just want your children to feel safe, to be safe, to not worry while you protect them. Durme, durme, hermosa doncella, durme, durme, sin ansia, sin dolor. Sin ansia, sin dolor. Durme, durme, hermoso hijico. Durme, durme, sin ansia, sin dolor. Sin ansia, sin dolor. Durme, durme, hermosos mis hijos. Durme, durme, sin ansia, sin dolor. Sin dolor.
Thank you, Teresita. And now I would like to welcome back Caroline and Armando and start with a question to Caroline. What most impacted you as you read Armando's story?
Yeah, I've had this opportunity to practice and to read his story for a time-ish now, getting ready to do this, and I listen to it in my car. I read it in different places, and tonight I got to read it after I got to meet Armando, and I could see, not that I don't know it was already your story, but to meet the actual Armando. And I can still see that 12-year-old boy in you as I look at you on the screen. So so much so that I think of so many, I get this great blessing that I get to work with kids all the time, and my own kids, and to worry about them, and to try to imagine what will be for them. And yeah, I know I had such a great thing to say and it flew out of my head. So I guess just that how much this is, how much work we all have to do to try to make sure that children, that 12-year-olds, that the Armandos, all of the Armandos in our world have a place that is a safe place, and have a future that is a hopeful future. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit verklempt. So I'm just, I guess, yeah, just to be able to see you as this 12-year-old boy, and to try to feel what that is feeling like, which of course I can't feel that because I'm no 12-year-old boy, but I know a lot of things, but to try to feel that, and to hopefully, to hopefully feel like some part of me now has an extra bit of inspired to do things in this world. So thank you so much, Armando.
Thank you, Caroline. I also want to ask Armando, what most impacted you about having Caroline read aloud your story today?
Yes. First of all, yeah, a big thank you to Caroline. It was a very impactful reading of the story. I could feel the excitement of reading my story. I know you truly embodied the 12-year-old version of Armando with your energy, and the way you told the story was so vivid. Like I could feel the tender moments in the story, and also the stressful parts, the angry parts. So thanks for letting my story live in your heart. I use the word heart a lot. I know Tanya here, she can attest to that, because I'm always like heart, this is my heart, but but it does have a big meaning, and I know you held it with a lot of emotion. And as you mentioned, like it might be a little rough, uncomfortable place to have that live with you, but I hope it becomes eventually a source of love in your heart. And and by sharing these stories and my story, that hopefully, as you work with kids a lot, that you get to just embody that love and that 12-year version, and just remember the tenderness of all the 12-year-old immigrants and people of color who are out there, who their stories need to be told too.
Thanks, Armando. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts and for just being here today. I'm also feeling all of the emotions, so thank you. For those of you listening, you'll actually also now see a poll sort of pop up on your screen asking you the level of impact of hearing the story. So take a moment and submit your answer. In the meantime, I'll highlight some of the powerful reactions to the story that you all wrote in the chat. And again, I won't read through all of them, but a lot of y'all were sort of imagining, people that as 12-year-olds in that position for, really no reason other than walking down the street. So I appreciate those comments in the chat, as well as those thanking Caroline for your passionate reading. Knowing one's worth and that there is beauty in what others may not see. When he got handcuffed, definitely a really big moment in the story. Highlighting how when you have a relationship with someone, you no longer see them as the other, you just see them, which I think is beautiful to watch in this present moment. And then many others really imagining like themselves in that situation or their loved ones, and how we just want our loved ones to feel safe wherever we live, no matter what they look like or how they appear. Injustice is a word that popped up in here, and how important it is to turn anger into action. So many beautiful thoughts in here. So thank you all for putting them in. And now I know we're going to move into a brief sort of Q&A where everyone can put questions into the Q&A feature or into the chat if you would prefer. For Caroline Saliman, for Rabbi Green, for Armando Peniche, and even myself. And I'll start us off with one question for Rabbi Green, which is, how do you hold Armando's story and the challenges facing undocumented immigrants anywhere from your role as a rabbi?
I've been thinking a lot about how you hold it. I guess the way I have to hold it is with a response. I'm going to teach. I'm going to try to inspire, and I need to advocate for justice. So when I teach, I think it's time to learn more about a more radical empathy. If radical is what we say when we hear something that's significantly different or it's not familiar, it seems to us that it's extreme if it makes us uncomfortable. So we sometimes tag something or someone as radical or as other. But it can also mean that it's time to make some real changes, to engage in a reorientation, a realignment. Sometimes we talk about atonement in religious spaces, and we can change atonement to at oneness. So if we take radical and put it to the side, and then we think about empathy, I think a lot of folks don't really understand empathy. I think we confuse it with sympathy. If you think about sympathy, it's when we feel connected to somebody. It could be about loyalty or having a special kind of sensitivity to other people and their experiences, and it's lovely and that's positive. But empathy is when we imagine or have the capacity to imagine someone else's feelings and their pains and their hurts. So there's a teaching that I refer to a lot. It's a Hasidic teaching. And the teaching talks about two friends chatting with one another, and one asks the other, "Tell me what hurts me." And the second person says, "How do I know what hurts you?" And the first responds immediately and says, if you don't know what hurts me, how can you say that you love me? So for me, radical empathy is when we actively, purposefully, deliberately strive to understand feelings and experiences of other people, and to be able to communicate that they are heard and seen and known. And all of those things go far beyond sympathy. And the last thing I'll say about the theological way to, or Jewish theological way of holding this space and this story and this person's humanity, I'll say that in Judaism, one of our master stories is that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. And the text says over and over and over again, we know what it's like to be a stranger in a strange land. We know what it's like to be beat up. We know what it feels like to not belong. I think that is there more than any other commandment in the Torah, to be mindful and caring and just toward the stranger, the one who is on a periphery. I think we see this more than any other commandment because empathy leads to humanity. And I think we have to strive to be human beings.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Armando and Caroline, do y'all have anything to add, any reflections before I sort of open it up to Q&A?
Yeah, I'll add a couple more things. Yeah, so thank you, Rabbi Green, because yeah, that is a wonderful way to put it, that radical empathy, and that's something that I know Motus Theater with all these stories that we're trying to do, trying to inspire people to, one, view immigrants with a different perspective, and also, to use those same stories and inspire more people. And, what better way to do it than with that radical empathy. And also, I see a lot of great comments in the chat, and I thought you would. It seems like a lot of people were there with Caroline and me as she was reading the story, and I appreciate that very much. And I just want to bring the whole experience together and share with you that particular day, as I was going through the notes in my head, I remember the song I was I was practicing, because we had a cello concert, well, an orchestra concert coming up, and we were getting ready to play "My Heart Will Go On" by Celine Dion from Titanic. So if you want the whole experience, think back on the story, and as you're counting the notes, think back on the song, and you'll see how I was in such an emotional moment already on myself, and then this whole thing happened. So I just thought you appreciate that too.
Thanks, Armando. I love the extra note. Thank you. And I know for now, I would like to see if there's any questions, right? If you have any questions, please submit them into the Q&A feature. And in the meantime, I do know that many of you listening would probably want more facts and information about the immigration system, how you can be an agent for change, and all of that. And so we created a fact sheet that we can put a link to in the chat. It has a lot of some action items, but a lot of facts about just how immigrants are part of the solution in fighting against COVID-19. So it's super great for y'all to reference back later. And now I'll sort of wait and see if there's questions coming in. I see there's already a few. And so we'll start with the first one that I see, which is, Armando, can you say a little bit about how that experience affected your life over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for posting it. So one of the things, I think the biggest impact they had on me is that it made me a little bit more timid as I was growing up. I think during those middle school and high school years, I started to become more timid and more of an introvert, and like one of those kids that, like at school, like if the teachers asked the answer to a question, like I knew it, but I didn't want to raise my hand because I didn't want to like be like, hey, I'm over here. I didn't want that attention. But I think the saddest impact they had on me is that after that, and I didn't realize it until we wrote this monologues, and is that's the reason why I got out of orchestra back in middle school. I was doing the cello and also some of the piano. And a few months after that experience, I think a younger version of myself just tried to protect itself. So I switched classes and I stopped doing it, and it's something that I love doing. And I think that was the most impactful thing out of this whole thing that happened to me. I had to let go of one of my hobbies. I try to pick it up now with the cello, but I don't own a cello because they're super expensive. But a part of me always feels like, oh, I could probably still play. My heart will go on.
Probably. Maybe it's like riding a bike. Thank you. And I think that the second question I see is actually also for you, which is how did you avoid becoming bitter about injustice and instead channel your hurt into helping and inspiring others?
Thank you. Another great question. And this one, I think it's a little bit, it goes with who I am as a person. I think throughout my life, this is one story out of many that I have, and, many that I hold in my heart. And I've unfortunately lived through a lot of hard spots in my life. And I think I've always chosen to just choose the tender side of it. And, like I mentioned before with the heart thing, like just, I guess, fight it with love, if that makes any sense. Definitely when this happened, and like seeing police officers after that sparked fear in me, and as I grew up, I had that feeling in me, but also the feeling that, like, it doesn't mean like all police officers are bad, or that they're all, they're all pulling over 12-year-olds, it means that some are, and that's not right still. But I think I use that as motivation to share these stories and speak out so that it doesn't happen to more people. And the only way to effectively do that is to reach the people on the other side, and even though this injustice happened to me, I have to find a middle ground, and from an early age, I had to be at peace with police officers and be like, like it wasn't particularly you that did this to me. I have these emotions about officers, but I can't let those get in the way of us forming relationships. So, like I said, I have a loving heart, and I also have a forgiving heart. So.
Thanks, Armando. There's a question here for Caroline. It says, you spoke about how when you met Armando, you felt different, even though you had already been reading and preparing for this tonight. So how did meeting him sort of change your view or your heart?
In some ways, it's almost as if I received like a script or a story. Really, I received a story. And, I knew it was a true story. I knew there really was Armando. I knew all that. And so, and I could, practice as, like, as I could, I could practice, I could think about, I could try to feel that. And then all of a sudden I see this person who I had possessed, like I was like possessed in the best way of being possessed by Armando for all this time, thinking of his words, thinking of his experience, seeing sidewalks, seeing cops drive by, like I just was in this great way possessed by Armando. And then I see him, and I, not that I didn't know he wasn't a person, not that I didn't know this wasn't true, not that I didn't know this was his story, but to see this person who's been so in my heart and in my life for this chunk of time, like he's so much in me. And then I see him, and I look at this man who wrote this story with details of this story that happened to him when he was a 12-year-old kid. And I can look at him, and I don't just, I see this 12-year-old kid as I look at this man who's there tonight. So it's something about really seeing, really actually seeing. And of course, if this is real life, I would only feel like I could not stop like holding on to him and hugging him tonight, because that's what I really wish I was doing, is just like standing there, you're like, me and Armando, like, here's my Armando right here. So I feel like, so it just changed, to really hear him. And if I can mention that before this started, Armando read it to me. So he read this same monologue to me, and hearing his words come out of his mouth and feeling his experience is at such a bigger, deeper level than hearing my own self read his story, for sure.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Armando, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, and then after that, I think we might move on to the next section.
Yes, just something real short. Like Caroline mentioned, I got to share my story with her before we started the event. And that's one of the things that we talked about, how she felt possessed by me in the best way. And I'm very thankful for that description, because yeah, like I, as you were reading the story and you read it with that same passion and excitement that, like I could relive those moments through you. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, like I could, you helped me picture it too, even though like I wrote those words. So thank you for that, Caroline.
I love it. Thank you both. And I know there's a few questions in the chat about perhaps like who we share these stories with, specifically if Armando, you've gotten it to share with, specifically if Armando, you've gotten to share it with police before. And I did want to share with people that we we do tour a lot of our Undocu America stories with different readers across the country. So it's been really incredible to have so many different people across different experiences and professions and, you know, everything sort of stepping into the shoes of our Undocu America monologists. Yeah, so if any of y'all are ever interested in connecting with us around that, definitely send us an email. I think I want to make sure we're on time for everything. So I'll sort of wrap this section up and want to ask back Rabbi Green to sort of come in for a final prayer before I also invite back in Teresita to sing a song. So we'll start with Rabbi Green.
Sure. A final prayer was inspired by someone who writes contemporary prayers, Alden Solovey, and he shared this some time ago, and I thought of it immediately when I saw that, when I was asked to share this kind of closing reflection. God of our mothers, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, open our hearts to serve others with joy and with thanksgiving. Remove ego, judgment, and self-will, so that we are present with kindness and understanding. Make us a tool of your hand, an echo of your voice, and a shining lamp of your love. Grant us the wisdom to offer ourselves willingly without fear. Fill us with compassion and grace, vitality and endurance, so that our service, our work, becomes a blessing in heaven and on earth. Baruch atah, Elohei kol hazmanim, molich amcha b'derech netzelet, letaken olam be'ahava. Blessed are you, God of the old. You set your people on a noble path to serve, to repair the world with love.
So the song that I'm going to be singing is called Avram Avinu, also known as Cuando el Rey Nimrod, or about King Nimrod, and about the birth of Abraham, who is the first Jew, the first person to acknowledge that there is one God, and the fact that when his birth was, essentially there was symbolism in the sky that he was going to be born. King Nimrod asked for all of the women who were pregnant at the time that as soon as they give birth, their child would die, that their child would be killed. But Abraham was spared and is the father of humanity. And this song also evokes essentially this feeling of hope, this feeling of love, this feeling of peace, and of taking care of each other, that we are our brother's keeper, that we are here to take care of each other in this world, regardless of where we come from and what we look like, and to fight for one another. So. Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrella, vido de luz santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer de Terra quedó preñada, el día en día él le preguntaba: ¿de qué tenés la cara tan demudada? Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. En aquella nacido hablaba, andavosla mi madre de la mehara, ángeles de cielo me acompañara, porque soy criado del Dios bendicho. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendillo, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendillo, luz de Israel. Miradle mi madre, que el Dios es uno, Él crió los cielos uno por uno. Dicedle a Nimrod que perdió su tino, porque él no quiere creer en el verdadero. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendillo, luz de Israel. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendillo, luz de Israel.
Thank you so much. This is Teresita Lozano, everyone. At this point, I would love to bring back Caroline and Armando, and I know we're all going to sort of go off into the evenings, and I wanted to offer you an opportunity to say, do you have any final words for each other before we go off and go into the rest of our days?
Yeah, I just have to say this gigantic thank you. I'm filled with such gratitude and to be so honored to get to be part of this and to get to ask to be part of this. And thank you, Rabbi Green. Thank you, Teresita. So beautiful. Thank you, the Motus Theater. But Armando, mostly thank you to you because of this place now in my heart that you have, and the 12-year-old Armando especially, but even the grown-up man you. So I'm very grateful that I got to do this. So yeah, thank you for this incredible honor.
Thank you, Caroline. I wish it was different times that we were doing this in person, because you would all get to see that adult version of Armando is still very much like the kid version. Very good. But we have this, and I'm thankful for everybody that is here and participating in the chat. And I just want to remind everybody to take care of yourself. You know, this is a story with a lot of emotion, and once we log off, you know, just to hold it in your heart and use it as inspiration to, you know, push that radical empathy that Rabbi Green was talking about. So yeah, I just want to express my gratitude.
Awesome. Thank you both. And on behalf of Motus Theater, I again want to thank Caroline Saliman and Rabbi Green from Congregation Har HaShem. Of course, our Motus Monologist, Armando Peniche, for sharing your story today, as well as Motus's powerful contributing artists, including Motus Theater's artistic director, Kirsten Wilson, and beautiful singer, Teresita Lozano. And again, thank you for welcoming us into your space today. If you're able, you can please consider donating to Motus Theater so we can continue our strategic work. And we do hope that you'll visit our website to find out how you can share these stories, including Armando's and many others, as well as find more information about our Shoebox Stories podcast with guest readers like feminist icon Gloria Steinem and actor John Lithgow. At one point, we had the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, Patrice Cullors, reading Armando Peniche's story. And those of you on Zoom will actually have your emails added to our mailing list so that you can join us in future performances, as well as you will receive a link to today's performance that you can share with friends, family, whomever, and you will get a survey link so that you can share some feedback with Motus Theater. And now I'd like to sort of welcome back Rabbi Green, who will be closing us out tonight. Thank you all.
So again, just thank you for everybody who came, to everybody at the Motus Theater, and Armando, to be sure. The music was so special, and it was special to have a bridge with Ladino as well. We have been sharing a little information at the end of our gatherings over the Sabbath, over Shabbat, and whether it's with HaYas or the and working for refugees, or the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, dealing with, again, refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants coming into this country, and action ideas. We hope people will take the stories and the people and lead them and bring them into your advocacy work. And we still have another gathering for our community tomorrow night, and that's the last link on our website, harhashem.org, for National Refugee Shabbat. Working with HaYas, we are going to be discussing a screening of Welcome Strangers. It's a documentary of Sarah Jackson, who's the founder of Casa de Paz, a volunteer-run program and shelter helping immigrants released from the ICE detention center in Aurora, and an opportunity to not just see the documentary, but also to meet with Sarah and have another conversation about work that needs to be done. So those links are in the chat, and we thank you all.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, everyone.
Sigo creyendo en ti, mar, tu horizonte no es tú.